Hello, it is Gaz Jackson, and we're talking about the big increase in dingo attacks on Kagari. I'm going to say Kagari. Kagari, okay, it's Fraser Island, always was, always will be, so I'm going to call it Fraser Island. But there's been a big increase in dingo attacks over the years. They don't seem to be scared of humans, they're stalking them, it seems to be getting worse and worse, and millions upon millions of dollars have been spent trying to sort this problem out. Now, even this week, we had a dingo that probably went down the beach to look for fish and ended up finding a French tourist and then having a sniff of her G-bangers and then taking a bite out of her derriere. And then his dingo mate last week was trying to baptize a boy in the water. So what has caused this big increase in dingo attacks on Fraser Island? And did they do it differently in the 80s before they had all this money spent on the island trying to control the dingoes? I spoke to an old animal control officer in the early 90s about his employment at Fraser Island in the 1980s, and what his solution was incredible, and it seemed to work beautifully. So millions of dollars have been thrown at the problem to try to keep the campers safe from the dingoes. And these include like cattle grids and fences around campgrounds and security cameras and GPS collars for the dogs, all sorts of things, even extra animal control officers and rangers on there patrolling. All of these things have been thrown at the problem, and nothing seems to work because there's no consequence to the actions of the dingo. So the dingo's still going to do what the hell he wants. So let's have a look at this conversation that I had with a old school experienced animal control officer that worked in the 1980s and how he went about his problems before all this was on Fraser Island. And it's quite eye-opening. Back in the good old days, there was a lot of old school handlers, and these animal control officers and rangers were super experienced handling horses, cattle, dogs, wild dogs, and so on. And these old career animal control officers, they're all gone now. You never ever see them. When I conduct dog bite prevention seminars around Australia, they are all very young. All the old ones, they're all gone, and so is all that massive wealth of experience. But the conversation I had with this old school animal control officer that worked on Fraser Island was extraordinary, and this is exactly what he had to say about what happened. Now, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, whether you like it or don't like it, I don't care. I'm just giving you an historic conversation that I had with an individual that had great success on Fraser Island in the 1980s, and this is his story. So back in the early 90s, I got up and had a dingo's breakfast, which is a quick piss and a look around, and I was doing a behaviour seminar, and I had an old retired animal control officer that worked on Fraser Island in the 80s there, and the conversation got to about the dingoes on Fraser Island and how he used to do it, and he was, typical Aussie, Aussie tough man, and he said, we never had a bloody problem for years, and he says, how we used to do it cost $5. So my ears pricked up, and I said, well, what'd you do? And he goes, we just used a bloody slingshot. And okay, just one of these, a slingshot, well, probably not as good as this one here, but just used a slingshot. He says, every time a bloody dingo went near the campsite, we just shot him in the ass with the bloody slingshot. He'll piss off and he wouldn't come back. And he says, in a couple of days' time, if one of the others come back, we shot him in the ass as well. He took off. And he says, soon there was not a problem with any of the campsites. But then he says, but then there is cunning as a shithouse rat. He says, they started to identify that it was the rangers' vehicles and us with the slingshots. So they used to wait till we go. Then they used to go back to the campsites. So then we had to do a COVID dingo slingshotting operation by going in private vehicles and slingshotting them with this from private vehicles. And he says, for years, we never ever had a problem. And I said, oh, well, why'd you stop? And he says, as soon as the bloody greenies found out about it and the politicians and everything, we were ordered that we couldn't do it. And as a result, it turned into a complete and total shit show after that. So there you go. That's what happened in the 1980s compared to today. Today, millions of dollars spent. The results are very underwhelming. Back in the 80s, $5 and teach the dog avoidance from going near the campsites, and problem solved. Now, I'm not suggesting that the animal control officers should all be equipped with slingshots, because that will have as much chance getting through as an unmarketable stray dog in the RSPCA getting out alive. What I do suggest is that if the dogs do not learn avoidance behaviour of people and the campsites, the dog attacks will continue. Now, they can be tranquilised, electric collars can be put on them, there's invisible fences that can go around that they can get zapped when they go near the campsite. But unless they show avoidance towards people and are unsure of people, they're going to continue to hang around them and do everything. But unfortunately, the negative things that you have to do to keep the dingoes away will all be unapproved by the woke ideology people in the RSPCA. So the dog attacks will continue. The money's going to be continue to be thrown at the problem, and the dog attacks are just going to get worse and worse. Anyway, I'm Gaz Jackson. That's my 2 cents worth. Bye for now.
Like all predators, go after prey that put up the least resistance. Domesticated sheep and cattle are like dingo fast food.